All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Global Learning Commons. We have a wonderful hour together here. Thank you for being here. My name is Nathan. I'm one of the learning designers at Fielding International, and we have a wonderful guest with us today. His name is Dr. Jason Van Heukelum. And I got to meet Jason last June at a at an event at a conference in Michigan, and shout out to Josh Rapoon from What School Could Be for bringing us together. We were on a keynote panel together, and I was just blown away by Jason's as a superintendent, his leadership, centering humanity, being innovative, speaking for students. Just he's got the whole package, and I think you're going to be really intrigued by what he has to say today. But before we go into Jason, he's sort of a special guest and maybe blowing up around the country because he is the protagonist of a brand new documentary produced by Ted Dintersmith, who many of you might know produced Most Likely to Succeed about a decade ago. And the new film is multiple choice. And in the film, it features Winchester Public Schools, which Jason is the superintendent of, and the amazing work that they're doing really around kind of the fusion of CTE and academics and the way that relates to time and space. And it's just an amazing story. And so we're going to actually show the 2-minute trailer and then pass it over to Jason. So without further ado, I am going to take over the screen here. And here is the 2-minute trailer of multiple choice.
We have a mismatch between what employers are currently seeking and what our education system is currently producing. So, for example, we have 8.1 million unfilled jobs, and yet 52% of college grads are underemployed. And it's about to get much worse with AI.
So, do you remember, did you like high school very much?
Boring. All she did was wait for the lunch clock. Then it's like, oh God, now we gotta go back to class.
Our young kids are graduating with the primary skill being how to pass tests. So curiosity withers. It's a muscle. It has to be exercised. We have no way of developing our human advantages, our human capability, unless we transform education.
The earlier we start our students looking at different pathways, everybody has a different interest. We're all not the same.
I have ADHD, so I'm always focused on everything really. And when I put on that helmet, it drains all that out. It's like inner peace.
So you'll need a blood pressure cuff and then a stethoscope.
Okay.
And then you want to go in and find a certain artery.
I just came to school one day and it was an option. It was firefighting, and I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. Let me try that.
What's innovative about the Innovation Center is the learning model. It's the 3 hours of time that the kids have here with autonomy and agency, designing their learning environment that integrates a core academic class like math with a CTE class.
It is for everybody. It is for the college bound. It is for the workforce bound.
What do the professors tell me? They say, the best student I got is a kid who took AP Physics and welding, AP Physics and small mechanics.
It reminds them of their inborn curiosity about the world, so that when technology comes for their chosen job field, they have the confidence that they can pivot to something else.
The purpose of school is not to be good at school. I think the purpose of school is to prepare students for life.
All right. So, and some of you have already started introducing yourself in the chat. Feel free to use that platform to uplift. And again, just want to appreciate everyone being here, for being in community. And I'm going to pass it over to Jason to share his wisdom. Jason?
Thanks, Nathan. Welcome. Thanks for having me this morning. I see some friends on there. I see Jennifer Lemp. Hi. I see April Dominy. I see Courtney. I see Lori McEwen, I think. So nice to see some friendly faces there. My name's Jason. I've been superintendent here in Winchester for 10 years now. Winchester is a small city of about 30,000 residents just outside the DC bubble. We don't claim the DC bubble. We're about an hour and 20 minutes from Washington, DC. And we're a district with 4,300 students, a one high school town. In my opinion, the best makeup you can have. We're small enough to pivot on a dime, large enough to innovate and be progressive. We have about 85% of my students qualify for free or reduced lunch. And so definitely poverty is a big part of the story of our families, working, trying to make ends meet, a lot of issues that come with poverty that I'm sure you all are well aware of. In addition to that, a third of our students are English language learners. So 33% of our students are English language learners. Um, and we're majority minority school division. So we have a lot of different races and ethnicities, including an emerging and growing Afghan refugee population. And so, in my opinion, that's a great makeup. And so, I think a couple things that I just want to highlight first and foremost with the film. If I want to say from the beginning, if you're looking to see the full film, you have that opportunity. It's a film that's available to everybody. We're really hoping to do a lot of screenings in different communities across the world. Of course, in the United States primarily, but across the world as well, to really raise and elevate this idea about career technical education, not just being a path, but being integrated and part of the entire spectrum of what students do, specifically in high school. So, as you're kind of listening to this conversation today, don't hesitate to reach out to those of us on the call to see if you might want to do that in your community. There's 3 points that I like to make after, we either watch the film together or in a situation like this where we've seen the trailer. I think CTE, career technical education in general, we've crossed that line, that barrier of is it good? Like it is now universally accepted as something that we need. It's universally accepted that we want kids participating in career technical education. I think we've crossed over this kind of, is it good for my future as a future adult? You hear college, university, like what's the return on investment? That conversation is certainly at the forefront of parents' minds and people's minds. And we see all of the jobs that we actually need in this country that are not being filled, that are directly aligned to career technical education. White collar jobs are now, being offloaded with the advance of AI and things like that. So the argument around is CTE important is not an argument anymore, and that shifted probably in the last 5 to 10 years. What I think we've done differently that I'm really proud of and I think is highlighted in the film is career technical education is not just a path in Winchester. It is integrated into everyone's path. And so what we did 5 years ago is, we put a stake in the ground and with our school board and looking at our data said, you know what, this needs to be for every kid. And here's why, right? So you got 100 kids in any graduating class in America, right? Just take 100, 10 of them are going to do what? 10 of them are going to drop out. You're at 90% graduation rate if you're lucky. That we're at 93, so we're above. We're doing pretty good. But 7 to 10% of my kids drop out. I don't know where they go. From that 90%, only half of those kids in Winchester, and we're pretty common across the country, about half of those kids will go to college, right? The other half will not go to college. From the half that go to college, so you're down to 45%, right? So of the 45% of my kids that go to college, only half of those graduate from college 6 years later. Let that sink in. I'm down to 23%, 22.5%. And now here's that kind of secret about our new economy and what we know and we're seeing. And many of you have kids. I have a senior in high school I'm about to send off into the real world. And now we know that even the 22% that graduate from college with a bachelor's degree in college, only half of those kids, down to 11% of the whole, are going to graduate at 22 years old, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to conquer the world. They're going to, only 11% of the total, half of the 22% are going to graduate and walk out the door with a job that can pay the bills and pay off the debt, right? And so when you do the math, you really have to question the design, okay? Because the truth is high schools in America are exclusively designed to send kids to college, period, right? And that used to work 100 years ago because if you didn't go to college, you walked right into a factory job that didn't have a need for a lot of skill, right? But that's no longer true anymore. And so when we went through that data with our own kids and just like looked around the room in the design team as we were about to build this center. We just said, what in the world? Like, what are we doing? 80% of a high school schedule in their 4 years, all the Carnegie units, the four Englishes and three maths, etc. Kids don't have any choice. It's prescribed. It's the same. We expect every kid to go through Algebra 2. Every kid's got to take world history. Every kid has to take Brit Lit. And so it really caused us to question. And some of those decisions we can't control at the school level. Those are state level policy decisions. But what we can control is saying, what do kids do in that other 20%? And so, as we started to wrestle with that, our design really became we need to make career and technical education a requirement for all kids. And that needs to drive their high school experience. And that's what we did. And so, at the Innovation Center, our kids have 3 hours of time. They take their CTE course. We have three academies up there. We have health sciences, we have professional skills, which is your trades, and then we have advanced technologies. And then they're also taking their English class up there. And so that is for every kid. We can go, we have a high school about 1,350 kids, 800 kids a year go through the Innovation Center. We have 4 shifts. And so within that 4 year span, our kids are there at least 2 times because we want them to be CTE completers. Many times they're there every year if they really enjoy it and they have other things they want to do. So that's the model in a nutshell. But then the next piece that I always remind people, so yes, that was one thing that we did differently, CTE for all. And let me just say, my college-going families, right, my traditional college-going families, many of you on this call are probably that family, the message you send your children, and I do too, go to college, get good grades, good SAT, blah, blah, blah. At first, my college-going families were like, that's not for me. That's not for my kid, right? But let me tell you, within 6 months, that argument was off the table because one, every kid loves CTE. Every kid loves working with their hands. And so mom and dad would get the stories at home once their college going kid was in welding and like, well, my kid's happy. My kid comes home and talks about what they're doing in school. I'm done. And then the magic was those same kids, as they were applying to their UVA, Georgia Tech, Ivy League school, whatever they wanted to do, CTE became the differentiator, right? It became a value add to their resume and to their profile or their brand. And so now in my community, 5 years later, all of my family see CTE as good for everybody, even if you're that quintessential, I'm going to college and I'm going to be a doctor or a lawyer, whatever. So that we took that off the table. The second thing that I think is important is in the 3 hours of time, we've deconstructed that. And I think many of us have been trying to get to that place where seat time and kind of that sit and get rote memory learning is not pervasive in schools. And we're certainly not perfect in any way, but at the Innovation Center, that 3 hours of time, our students and our teachers have agency around how they design that time. They have a lot of freedom around time and space. And so if you were to walk into the Innovation Center right now, you're going to see kids all over the building. They're working in small groups. They're working in the nursing lab. They're working with the firefighting program. But they have projects that they got to get done. We're trying to mirror the real world that you and I live in every day, where projects are most important. Getting your work done is most important. No one cares how much time I spent on the work, right? No one cares. They want the work to get done, and then they want it to be really good work. That's what matters. And so that is not what matters in most schools, right? In most places, it's about how much time you spent sitting in class in order to get your Carnegie unit. 90 minutes a day for 90 days equals biology, right? And so we're trying to deconstruct that. And the beauty of that piece is, guess what? And you know this, right? The kids love it. They absolutely love having that agency, and they tell you, and they tell me, thank you for treating me like a young adult, right? Thank you for treating me like a 17-year-old. And so I joke with my team and with others, like in this country, we ask 18-year-olds to raise their hand to go to the bathroom. I mean, just think about that for a second. We treat 18-year-olds almost like kindergartners. There's no scaffolding. There's no kind of gradual release of responsibility because we're about command and control, right? We're about that organized. We got 1,400 kids in that big high school. And I was a high school person. I was a high school administrator. So I get it. I mean, it's a lot, right? And obviously we have to have safe spaces. But what we found is that in those spaces where we give that agency and autonomy, we loosen up a little bit, our kids rise. They rise to the challenge. They are grateful that we're treating them like young adults, and we hold them with high expectations and accountability. It's not loosey-goosey, and they know there's deadlines to meet. And even on the generalized behavior, right? Silly play or all the trappings of a high school that kids do bad things sometimes. We hold them to high standards. And what I can tell you is in that space, because we've loosened up a little bit and put that ownership with the students, we don't have that problem. We really don't. Our students are not, quote, misbehaving because we've given them this freedom. And it's been really refreshing to see the joy kind of come back into our students' faces and in their spirit. And then also our teachers, right? Because I have a deep belief that in general, many of our teachers are disenchanted with the work that we're asking them to do every day. And we've kind of squashed their light, their creativity, their spark. And after a quarter century of standardized testing, starting with No Child Left Behind, I'm not convinced we've gotten to a better place. If anything, I feel like we are now obsessing in the margins of what is important in the breadth of a human development, right? And so that leads to another thing I always want to share with folks is, in general, I feel like we are missing a large portion of human development because we obsess on reading and math in particular, and we measure that through a very narrow, multiple choice, standardized view with a lot of psychometricians and a lot of, data, et cetera. But in the film, in fact, the welder that you saw in the trailer is one of my favorite storylines. There's like 6 or 7 student storylines in the film. They're all great. But his storyline is that quintessential ADD boy, right? Who, was thriving up until 6 years old. And then school beat it out of him. And his mom is on the film, and she tears up a little bit when she talks about her son and how from 6 years old to 15 years old, school was not a good place for him. He was the kid that was always in tier 3 intervention, right? And so we're just going to keep, focusing on reading. You're not reading so well. You're not doing math so well. Let's keep on it. The problem with that is we spend all of our time doing that. And so school becomes a real drudgery for many of our students. And so I like to believe that we can expand that scorecard, right? We've talked about 21st century skills for a long time. The truth is it's lip service in most places and even here in Winchester to some extent. And it's because we don't value, really, because we don't measure those things outside of math and reading. And wouldn't it be great if we had a day where all of us, but kids in this case, had a jagged learner profile, like Tom Rose would talk about from Harvard, right? This kind of myth of average, like, hey, maybe there's 10 dimensions to human development. Maybe there's 15 dimensions. And all of us have strengths and areas we can work on. And if I were a reflective learner, and I'm trying to get better or try to flex my curiosity muscle, because that doesn't come as natural to me, but I might be a really good reader or vice versa, how might that messaging be to students? And so with this kid in particular, he finally got into welding. And you can see him in the film just kind of come alive and thrive to the point where now he's a 19-year-old kid in our community, walked out the door at Hanley High School and walked right into a job that he loves, that he's grateful for, that he's passionate about. And he's even upskilling himself immediately, right? He's already going back to the community college to upskill even more. And, it's a good story. But going back to It's for All, he was taking welding alongside a girl, a female student who's at UVA and is likely going to become an attorney, right? And so raising the dignity of work for all kids is another piece of what we're trying to do instead of saying, the workers go to the right. And we need them. We need those workers, but they're not so smart, right? And we're the elite kind of thinkers, and we're going to the left. No, we put them all together, and it maintains what we call social cohesion among our staff and our students. Because, like I said, we're a very diverse community, but in many respects, inside the schoolhouse, we were segregated because of the traditional structures of school. So we had a diverse group of kids come in the door, and then we sorted them while they were there for 7 hours. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't hang out together, maybe on the football field if you're lucky. But now we have these spaces where all my kids are together, regardless of their future plans, college or career. And that's been really powerful with our student body. The last thing I'll say, and then I know there's questions and we can keep talking, but one of the charges I have for folks is every high school in America has the assets to do this work, right? It is a reorganization. It's a reorientation of the Gold Star. It's a reorienting of our purpose. But this does not require $1 million, right? It doesn't require more people. Every high school in America will have CTE programming. Every high school in America has teachers. But it does require some rethinking and revisioning with staff. But it is certainly possible in anywhere USA. So anyways, I'm happy to take questions. I would love for all of you on the call to watch the film. I think it's inspiring. You turn your story over to somebody, which is what we did. I had no idea what would come out on the other side, and I've watched it probably 100 times, and I still cry when I'm at the end because I know every kid in that film, right? And with that, I'll turn it back over to Nathan.
Perfect. Jason, that was amazing. My mind is buzzing right now because we know that I'm sure everyone's feeling this way. We take a moment to reflect in small groups, kind of process what we heard. And then we're going to come back and then we'll get into questions. Well, we were having a remarkably good conversation. I was with Jason, and I think one question I'll finish my thought. If there's two things that I hear when I hear Jason talk, it's around authenticity, making the work real, and agency, giving real freedom to students and educators, and then building the systems and structures around that to make authenticity and agency a thing. So Jason, I'll start there. Is that something that you see, like, yes, agency and authenticity are kind of the pillars of which you're creating your systems? And a follow-up, because I know a lot of people are here around the learning environment. How have you designed the structures, the spaces, to accommodate those things?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that's certainly something I care deeply about as a dad and as an educator. I think the secret sauce is when kids come to the table and are invested and committed to the work, our job's easy, right? And so many places, including places in my own school district, the adults are doing a lot of work, right? And the kids are just not committed. They're not invested. They haven't bought stock in the company. They're still calling bullshit on it all. And so that is got to be part of our design process. And I'm hearing an echo. Everybody hear me? Okay. And so I'll use one leadership principle I talked about recently, like that I use with my team that I think we should also use with kids, is that tight, loose, tight, right? And so one of the things you find at the Innovation Center is we have tight projects and deadlines that kids have to get done, just like the real world. But we're loose in how we get there. And we're also loose in the amount of time you need to spend to get there. And that's where the agency comes in. When you give folks ownership over the process, certainly with caring, loving guides on the side, but you're not dictating every single second of their life, students tend to blossom. For our architects and designers on the call, certainly when you have the opportunity to redesign or to create new spaces, that only adds to the ability to get that done. And again, you'd see a clear, stark contrast. The Innovation Center was an old elementary school about 500 yards from our high school, and we took $17 million and redesigned it. And with all of this in mind, and it flows. It's just natural, right? You walk in there, you just see natural spaces for kids to congregate. Whereas my high school, that's over 100 years old, on the exterior, you would find it's a beautiful, beautiful school. It was named the most beautiful school in the state of Virginia. No lie. Look it up. And it's gorgeous. On the inside is like hallways with very small classrooms, very hard to feel, open and collaborative. So we've created a freshman academy recently, and we're doing the best we can with the space we got. We bought some new furniture, those classic moves, but it's still a lot more challenging because the space doesn't just make it all happen. So space matters. I'd like to. I don't know if I'm ready to go back to the 70s where you had open classrooms, but
No, don't do that. Don't. The acoustics are terrible.
Yeah.
Jason, there's a couple questions around the staffing. How do you successfully staff this sort of fusion of CTE and an academic program?
Yeah, the beauty of it is it doesn't require more staffing. So like I said earlier, every high school in America has the assets to get this done. It's not more. For us, we have I think I have 5 English teachers up there. At any given moment, I have 200 kids at the Innovation Center, right? And there's 4 shifts per year, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring. So I have 5 English teachers up there. I have special education support. I've got English language learner support. And then I have my CTE teachers, your welding teacher, your nurse aide teacher, your firefighting teacher. If you do have more cost, it's because you're so excited about the CTE programming that you always want to add more programs, right? We've added 3 programs since we started, and now we're completely out of space. We really can't add any more, but that's where if you add a program, you add cost.
Yeah. And folks on the call, there's many questions coming in the chat. That's great. Please put your questions in there. Also, if you can upvote them so that we know who really wants to hear the answer to this, just for the limited amount of time we have. There's a question around the how behind the fusion between integration and academics. I think Mark mentioned the movie doesn't do a great job of showing how that sort of integration happens. Can you kind of speak to what does that look like on the ground? How have you actually fused together these 2 programs that often are apart?
Yeah. My first piece of advice is always don't try to put a square peg in a round hole, right? Don't overthink it. I hate this example. Sorry if any of you have used it, but this hey, we're going to teach carpentry and geometry. No, that doesn't have you looked at the geometry standards? 98% of them have nothing to do with carpentry, right? Just because you measure things doesn't mean carpentry is going to marry with geometry. So, English still has to teach English, right? And so the way we've done that is a couple things. One is we chose English after a couple years of trying to do other things because English is a nice curriculum and the standards spiral year by year. So we essentially have somewhat of a PLC, even though all of those 5 English teachers are not teaching the same English 9, 10, 11, 12. They've created, and we paid them to come in the summer and design these project-based learning experiences quarter by quarter, whereby kids, the entire Innovation Center right now is working on a project-based learning unit on progressive education. So my AP Lit kids, my 12th graders who are going to UVA, and my 9th grade regular knuckleheads, my 14-year-old kids that are just they're 14. I taught 14-year-olds, so I know exactly what they're like. They're all doing the same theme of their PBL, and then those English teachers are able to differentiate and scaffold literature, etc. The literature is where they connect to their academy. So their professional skills academy, their health sciences, etc. And then another beauty is the groupings that we put the kids in, cross academy. So you have some cross connective tissue, if you will. And so kids are learning, well, what are you doing? Oh, you're in welding. So they're also learning about the other areas of CTE during these moments. We also allow them to have groups that are multi-age. I ran into a group the other day. We had 10th and 11th graders, and they knew each other from some athletics things that they played together. They were in 2 or 3 different English classes, but they were all together in the same group working on a similar project. And so then the other piece of the model is there is a lot of independent learning time on the core academic side because we want that to be as efficient as possible so they can free up time to spend more time in CTE. And so by making that mastery-based, competency-based, and individual, kids can progress pretty quickly and master that content so they can spend more time doing some things they like. One thing I did forget to mention to the whole group is in addition to taking 2 classes there, they're also working on their passion project, which is a third thing that they have to get done. And so they need more time. And so I find that when you give those students agency, then they are more efficient in their learning of core academic content. They do it faster.
Yeah, love that. Question from Constance from DC Public School. She mentioned that DC recently opened 2 advanced technical centers with similarities similar to the Innovation Center, and they're very close to you in Virginia. She's wondering how might they come visit, and that's probably you might be getting this inquiry from a lot given the film. What is the process to come in and do a learning excursion at the Innovation Center?
Yeah, we need to get our act together on that because it's starting to go crazy. I mean, right now the best way is to reach out to us, and we schedule those individually at this point. I mean, essentially, if you're local, you need a half a day at on site. You know, a good 2 hours will get you what you need. If you're coming from out of town, come spend the night. We have a beautiful city with some nice restaurants, etc. So we've been hosting that as well. Excuse me. So.
Awesome.
You all
Thank
have
you.
my contact here, so don't hesitate to reach out. I'll probably forward it to somebody that's going to do all the logistics, but happy to.
Excellent. One of the things, and Barnett brings up the question, how did you create time and space for teachers to learn and lead this work? And sort of giving the context for that, we do a lot of work at Fielding to move teachers along to prepare, mindset work, kind of the system structures, pedagogical changes to work in different environments. What did you do at Winchester to help teachers kind of empower them to this, what sounds like a pretty big shift in their practices?
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate in that, we had this third thing that we were doing, which is we had this old elementary school that I told city council, you need to either tear it down or we need to repurpose it. And I had this vision for elevating CTE, et cetera. So, we had a nice runway prior to implementation, a good 18 months, where we knew all the CTE teachers were going. They didn't have a choice. But then we got to have volunteers on the core academic side, which is always helpful because they're usually your more innovative early adopters who are excited about change, et cetera. And we had some consultants that worked with us on project-based learning experiences and design of that. But what I find is most helpful is paying teachers in the summer to come in their shorts and t-shirt and sit, in facilitated group time with my instructional team, which I have some very gifted, instructional coaches, et cetera. And so just giving them time and space to plan those authentic experiences so that when the doors open on the first day of school, they got their plan for the year, they're ready to roll.
Yeah. Jason, given sort of the excitement around multiple choice and the inquiries that you're likely receiving, do you have any resources that are open source? Like, for instance, Barnett asked, is there a master schedule of a teacher and a student to kind of help people provide some, ideas for how they might get started in this work?
Yeah, I think our schedule is on the website, which I think I just saw posted in the chat. And so you can see a sample schedule that does change, but it's a sample of what a day might look like or a week might look like for a student and a teacher. There's still things we have to do, right? And we mentioned in the breakout session that, welding and some of these CTE classes still have some pretty rigid time requirements that you've got to spend X amount of time in the lab, et cetera. So you can see how we tackle that.
Yeah. A lot of questions coming in. I think a simple one is, do students have the opportunity to earn professional certificates or any credentialing or micro credentials?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. All right. One group was mentioning how this is all about high school right now with the CT academic fusion. What is your district doing right now to kind of bring that down into the middle school and elementary school? Really looking at that sense of agency, joyful learning,
Mhm.
authenticity.
Yeah, on the career side, we have redesigned our middle school offerings to align, first of all, to the academies. Um, and then we're exploring right now with our new strategic plan. Um, Right now, for example, I'm looking at the RIASEC framework, which is coming out of the Department of Labor, which is an inventory essentially. We could all take it, and it's going to ask you a bunch of questions about what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, and give you kind of some direction of jobs and careers that you might enjoy as a human. And that is, you're able to give that all the way down to kindergarten. And there's a couple schools that we're looking at that I've talked with that I have kind of made that their common language around career technical education from kindergarten through 12th grade. And if you visited, the kids even, they call them their letters. They know what their letters are, which is their strengths, right? And they do these inventories on a 6 month basis, and kids are connecting their interests to the content or the learning, and teachers are having those conversations. So that's a vehicle that we're looking at to scale down. But certainly we're on the infant stages of that implementation.
Yeah. Mike asked, do you have a profile of a successful educator at Winchester? Similar, like we have a profile of a graduate. Have you done any work with like what are the skills, competencies, dispositions for a successful educator in your district?
Not really. The only thing that would be close to that, we do have a pretty elaborate rubric for our skills and dispositions, and it has it has the student side and then it has the teacher side. But it's a vehicle for teachers to assess themselves on how well they facilitate creativity. How well
Hmm.
do I facilitate communication? How well do I facilitate critical thinking? So it's a
Hmm.
continuum. It has four
Yeah.
levels where you kind of self-reflect. I'm gonna post that in the chat real quick.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and just and you used the term of the guide and facilitator earlier. That reflection on I'm facilitating these things. I'm not, I'm not directly infusing, creativity into my students.
Hmm.
I'm giving opportunities and experiences for students to kind of build those skills and dispositions.
All
That's
right, I just posted
wonderful.
that in the chat for skills, and let me pull up the dispositions.
Yeah. As you're doing that, Josh says, would love to have you talk about how college admissions look at kids like Liz at University of Virginia who took welding, how the film is a yes and film about college and
Yes.
career.
Yeah, that's a huge win. I got so many stories, guys. One of the first stories was before this all started. This girl, she had graduated, and the year after she graduated, maybe the second year, I was adamant about removing valedictorian and salutatorian. Well, I took hell for that in my community, right? I was lowering standards, this is terrible. And my purpose was you've got these, in general, like let's take your top 15% of academic students. They're like competing like Hunger Games for hundreds of thousands of a point. And I'm like, and they're making really bad choices, right? They're choosing AP
Yeah.
psychology, no offense, because it's going to get a quality point over welding or something they really want to do. This girl, she graduated before I did this, but she was in that top 10. Like she could have been valedictorian, but she chose to take 3 years of welding, and she goes to Georgia Tech, right? So, I took AP physics, I got all the chops, got great SAT scores, and I got 3 years of welding. And oh, by the way, I'm a female. Put that on your resume, right?
Mhm.
And so she, during this hotly contested debate in our community, where I am like just being lambasted for being a terrible human, this former student comes back. I didn't even know her, and she puts on Facebook this beautiful post and just says, "I was that kid. And I told my parents I wanted to take welding, and they told me, go for it, honey. And now I'm at Georgia Tech crushing it as an engineer." And I'm like, drop the mic. That's the story right there. And so another story, we had a kid, You talked about credentialing. So this kid, 18 years old, he
Good
turns
morning.
18. He takes the EMT national exam. He's a certified EMT. He's riding literally as a senior in high school. He's on the ambulance taking calls in our community.
Hmm.
Full ride to Harvard, right? Full ride, you know? And I have to believe that they look at his resume and they're like, "Oh, you got a 1500 in SAT. Good job. Oh, you got 4.25 GPA. Great. Oh, you're an EMT certified EMT and you were like literally volunteer EMT in your community. Check.
Yeah.
Let's come to Harvard, you know?"
Yep.
Those are the
Yep.
stories that if you go down this road, they will happen immediately.
I love that. I love that. Josh also says, would love for you to talk about the mental health of kids who are experiencing these multiple choices. And it sounds like we have somebody else who's in the film, Courtney. Courtney, if
Yes.
you're able to jump on and talk about that as well, would love to hear about the mental health side of this.
Go, Courtney.
I'm going to follow your lead, Jason. It's not, there's not a whole lot of complexity to it. When we remove choice, students' mental health is compromised. Their deep, authentic learning, their sort of their center, their purpose, we lose it, and that has real consequences for how they're staying in school, how they're connecting. We see this a lot with families, how they're connecting to their families. These are our students who are disengaged, right? We remove choice. They feel disenfranchised because they've got one option. It's hop on the college train and excel. And not everyone has maybe the family support that you described in that story, Jason, where the family said, go get him and, go for welding. Some students feel sort of trapped in that experience. It has real serious mental health consequences. I'm sure we all have examples of what that's like. We talked a little bit. The film does address that. What happens when students are living in the sort of dangers of a single story, and they don't feel they have agency or options outside of that. For many years, we ran at Boston University, and it's still running now, but I was directing the college mental health education programs and saw many hundreds of students, make it to Georgia Tech, make it to Harvard, and their kind of things fall apart. They burnt out. They gave everything they had to this agenda that was not theirs, but a societally structured notion of what life should be. And they hop on that train, they're in school, and they're suddenly dissatisfied and also stuck with what to do now. They've not taken the time to discover and fumble and wonder and choose and navigate their time, navigate their free time, and all the scaffolding you've referred to, Jason. In the absence of that, they hit a real wall, and then they drop out. Then there's an interruption with real consequences, and we know that they're serious. The intersection of the mental health and the dropout lead to real low return rates. Students do not return back to school to complete their post-secondary degree, which leads to undereducation, underemployment, dissatisfaction, disability. It's a real, very clear pathway that you are interrupting with all these ideas, all of you. Thanks.
Yeah. Jason, anything to add there? Thanks, Courtney.
No, she nailed it.
Yeah. One final question. Wendy asked very quickly how you're partnering with community and business.
Yeah, I haven't talked much about that. We have over 80 industry and business partners that partner with us. We do a number of things. One, we've expanded dramatically the opportunities for our kids to leave school and go do an internship, job shadowing. So we're very flexible with that. And we have, I want to say close to 70% of our students graduate with a work-based learning experience, and our goal is to get to 100%. We started at like 20%, so it's just dramatically increased. And go figure, our kids love leaving school. I think another thing that we've seen in our community that's over 5 years is gelled. Initially, there's this real fear factor on the part of business and industry who don't work with kids every day. Like, oh, 16-year-old, who wants to have a 16-year-old around, Every time, we cross that bridge and our kids are just incredible. Like every time, and I mean every time. The adults in the industry in the quote real world are like, wow, these kids are impressive.
Yeah.
These kids pushed us. They challenged our own thinking, and so that definitely plays into it. We also sponsor what you might call like a similar to like an artist in residence kind of concept, where industry in residence. So, some job sites are somewhat there's some barriers for kids below 18 to enter that job site. So we ask them, the industry, to donate their time of their employees to come on our site. And instead of doing a presentation to our kids, we ask them to spend multiple days working with our kids in the lab or on the projects. So there's this organic conversation happening between the adult that is, works at the welding shop or whatever, and our kids. They get to hear their story. They get to work together, around whatever they're working on. It's much more authentic. And our kids are learning primarily this concept of a nonlinear path, which is, guess what? Many of us in this room, like our lives were not linear. Like we took different roads at different points at 25, 30, 35. Kids happened, get married, got divorced. Like there's all kinds of things that's going to happen in life. And so they hear these stories from real people, and it helps them like not be so scared about, their next step after high school. Like I've got to find the one magic path at 18, and if I miss it, my whole life is ruined. It's like, no, that's not how the world works, and it's going to be okay.
Well, Jason, this has just been fabulous. And thank you all for being here and participating. I cannot thank you enough. Go screen the film, and we're actually going to pass it over here to Josh Rapoon of What School Can Be to talk a little bit about how you can do that. We'll wrap up here in a couple minutes, but Josh, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. I'm dropping the link back in the chat. I think I've dropped it about 10 times already. If you're interested in screening the film, go to multiplechoicefilm.com. If you put your name in the form, there's a very simple short form there. It goes directly to the database of our distributor, Roku Films, and they are incredibly responsive. They'll reach out to you right away and can begin the process of sharing a screener link for you so you can see the whole film before you make a decision about screening the film. You can also see where screenings are happening, and you can see the trailer again. So one-stop shop, multiplechoicefilm.com. Nathan, this has been really awesome. Jason, fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Josh. And our one of our partners, Mike Posthumus, is going to take us home.
Thanks, everyone. I just want to continue to thank everybody for showing up and participating in these conversations. It's always inspiring and exciting to hear from everyone and to share these ideas. Our next session, we're actually having a conversation across the world. We're going to be inviting Jen Sparrow. She is the Deputy Superintendent at the Singapore American School. And we're going to be talking about the impact of a set of learning communities that they built on their campus in a brand new 7-story, 2,400 student elementary school. I pulled up just a quick photo to share of that amazing, this is the exterior of that environment, but it's really an amazing school, doing really amazing things in an incredible place. And if you want to hear the story of how they've brought this kind of collaborative dynamic learning experience to the elementary level, Jen is going to be sharing a bit about that journey and the impact that they're already seeing with students. So we hope you join us. That is going to be an evening session, 7 p.m. Because Eastern time, because she's in Singapore. So we needed to find a time to connect with her that would work for as many parties as we could. Thank you. Reach out to Fielding International if you're excited to instigate or begin to imagine some of these inspiring changes in your community, whether it's design of program or space. We're always here to partner and collaborate and find ways to work with schools like yours. So please reach out, and designers as well. We're always collaborating with architects, engineers, and designers on projects like this together. And one last round of applause and thanks to Jason for all the time, and those from the Winchester community that also joined us, and What School Could Be for your partnership in making this happen. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.